This world is filled with fire and fury. Storms of ages roar. But there's a mystery behind the story the heart cannot ignore. My world's been broken by you, and I've gone under. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. There was once a field of my own planting, ready to be reaped. But now that garden so enchanting has become ashes at your feet. Should I be running from you? I have no answers. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. If the hopes and schemes of my imagination had all come true, would I be even one step closer to the sight of you? You tear down the false around you, so truth can be heard. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. And he comes to turn the heat up higher, though the journey may be far. We have the chance to dance in the fire of the Avatar. You take the pain of the world upon you for just one word. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. You take the pain of the world upon you for just one word. What else can we do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over.
Jay Baba. I just wanted something to kind of remind us of Jane and all that she was through the years. So anyway, I was just going to see what Charles and Christopher had to share. And just a reminder, a couple of things, two things quickly. If you want to see just Charles and Christopher instead of the whole gallery, then you click on view and click on speaker, and that will just bring the speaker up. If you want to see everybody in the gallery, then click on gallery and you can see the gallery. The other thing is that we do try to raise our hands digitally, and that just means that if you want to speak, you hit Alt Y on a PC and Option Y on a Mac. There's a little reaction button at the bottom. If you click on that, it'll have the raise hand function. So that's how we raise our hands so that we can speak. The other thing is I'm going to ask Charles and Christopher to kind of open up for us. So we'll get around to hands after they're done. And I think Hana Peterson might want to share after that, since she worked with Jane for a number of years. So Jay, Baba, Charles, Christopher, good morning.
Jay Bob, good morning, everybody. I'm so happy that we are here together on this special day. I actually think it's a wonderful idea to have remembrances of people close to Baba on the day they went to Baba. It's a lovely idea. I like it better than the birthday idea. Because it is. We want to talk first a little bit about that, why that's so special, and in her case, in Jane's case, and I think it's true for many who are close to him. But let me say first, Ruthie, that was just beautifully done. That was so touching. And the way you put the photos together with the music, just so lovely, and it brought Mother very close, brought Baba close. So thank you so much.
I cried when I looked at it. And the big thing was I was so scared because, Jane, the woman who knew all about this. So it was nerve-wracking trying to do it, but Baba helps always.
You did a wonderful job.
Thank you, Charles.
Of course, Buzz's song is so beautiful. And just to say, he actually wrote that for Mother, for Jane, and for Christopher, and for myself during the sort of upheaval in Myrtle Beach. And he wrote it as a way to support and comfort us in a time when surrender was such a key gift from Bob, giving us the grace to surrender to him. And so that's what that's the genesis of the song, just in case you know. Also, one photograph that popped up of just Baba in the young years, I guess 1937, you think it was? I think it's Switzerland, was a photograph sent to Mother by Baba himself
1960.
in 1962. So just so you have that background. So let me say a few things, and then I'm going to turn to Christopher, because of course, most everybody on here, if not everybody, knows Jane and knows her story. So I don't need to tell her story, but Christopher and I'd be delighted to, answer any questions anyone has at some point about her story that you don't know. But rather than tell her story, I thought it would be helpful to start where we are today, and that is at the last of her life in the world as Jane, and then let that open up other thoughts and reflections about her love for Baba that many of you will, I know, share. Let me start with the quote she loved perhaps the best from Baba. I don't know if I could say that, but I think it was one of her very favorites, if not her favorite. And that is the one that you all know. Inscribe these words in your heart. Nothing is real but God. Nothing matters but love for God. And if there's a coda to her life, that would be it. And that would be a mantra too, because Jane lived a life that was very difficult and complex in much of her life. So, of course, when she came to Baba, it had a new complexity, a new challenge. But throughout her life, she had to meet great challenges, living out what it means to be Jane and what she was given to live out for Baba. So her constant remembrance that all this is his. None of this is real. This is a drama that's being played out. And we all have our role to play that he gives us, and we play it the best we can, was what sustained her, I would say, in her lowest moments and in her highest moments. That's what helped her to reconnect always with the truth that only he is real, that nothing else is real. And of course, as an actress, this person in theater all her life, she knew what it is to play a part, and so Baba used that and said, this is the part you have to play. And in many ways, which I won't detail right now, but in many ways, he gave her the hardest part imaginable for who she was as a person. Not easy at all. So having said that, let's go back to April 11th, 1997, the day she went to Baba. I would say it's the day that the words that I just quoted from Baba were fulfilled in her life, where she, through those last months of illness and maybe last 2 years, just before she went to Baba, there was such a transformation and freedom that came leading up to her going to Baba in his embrace. So, Christopher, why don't you talk a little bit about, and you might wonder, I'm turning it over to Christopher because for a number of reasons. One, he became her son, her spiritual son, towards the last part of her life. And that is not just because he was connected to me. He actually met Mother before he met me. So they had a very deep connection through St. Teresa and of course through Baba. And of all the people she knew, Mother did not let people closer into her. She's a very private person, very many people, but beyond a very small number of people, her children, she did let him in. And in fact, he got away with things with her that I never got away with. I'll have to say that. So he was very close to her. And so at the end, he was caring for her. I was working a lot, traveling, and he was there on spot and Wendy caring for her. And so, and of course, Sandy also. So those were the people there. And so his memory of that day and that time is especially meaningful to me. So I wanted you to share that if you would.
Yeah, there were a few things that happened in the days right before Jane went to Baba. And one was, before she was really kind of losing consciousness from the dose of morphine. And Bob was an amazing doctor to her, just would do anything for Jane and come and visit and take care of all of her needs in addition to her treatment. And she loved him so much. But there was one occasion, towards the end, she kept repeating Mara's name a lot. And so we got to talking about that and about her death. And I said, it's going to come soon, and you're going to go and see Baba, but also Elizabeth and Mara will be there, and eventually Mani. And then pretty soon Charles and I'll be there too. And she said, do you really think so? And I said, absolutely. And that made her happy. But the day before she died, it was an amazing experience. So, she was in her studio, in her bed, and I was there with Sandy Lyons, helping to take care of her. And she was sleeping, and Sandy and I both looked out her window, which faces Baba's house. And we both had the same reaction, that something was different. And I didn't say anything about it, but Sandy was looking out the window and she said, well, that's weird. And I said, well, Sandy, what do you see? And it was exactly the same thing I saw, which is that Jane had always been able to see Baba's fence through her window, but we could see Baba's house like better than ever, as if the space between her studio and Baba's house had become shortened, and the wall of Baba's house was right there. And Sandy, we thought, what? But it was really like a miraculous experience. Like Baba's house was moving closer so that he could receive her. And then that night, the night before she died, some of you might remember, that was when the Hale-Bopp comet was around. So it was February, March, April of 97. And we'd been able to see it a little bit, but the night she died, that comet was so bright. We noticed walking into her studio, the tail was so vivid. And we always associated that with Jane's passing. And then later, long after she had gone, I was writing my dissertation about St. Teresa. And one of the events that the nuns talked about Teresa's death, there was a comet in the sky on the night she died. So she died early in the morning on the 11th. It was 4:50 in the morning. And so her last night, Charles and I were alone with her in her studio. We were on night duty, and Charles was sleeping on the sofa. And she had this leather recliner right at the foot of her bed in her bedroom. So I slept on that night. And, just a couple hours before she passed, I had an experience that I'd never had before, where I can only describe it as it was like an enormous portal had swung open, like a door had swung open. And it was a door onto infinity. And it was like pictures you see of the universe where it's just unlimited darkness dotted with stars. But something changed, this feeling of eternity, infinity. And then after she passed, it swung shut again. And the last thing I just want to say is, that I always felt that there was something numinous about Jane. And I always felt Baba with her, whether it was when she was talking with Baba or just in a casual moment like dinner. And her conviction in Baba was so absolute. There was no nothing shakable about her conviction of Baba as the eternal Christ. But, you know, I think part of how we explain that is something that Baba said to Jane in 1958, when it was soon before he was about to leave. And it was that day you see in photos of when he was listening to the tape of the Buddha's life outside what's now the caretaker's cabin, and Anita Villard is holding the umbrella over him. And while that was happening, Jane had an anxiety attack. It was May 23rd. And she started getting all these thoughts in her head, like, you know, I've had this experience of recognition of Baba, and now he's leaving, and all my life is going to go back to the way it was before he came, which she pictured as a life of really chaos, disorder, and a feeling of alienation. And well, it's going to be that way again. And then soon after that, she heard a voice calling and said, Jane, Baba wants to see you. He was in the lagoon cabin by that moment. And he called her in, and the words that he said, which meant probably more to her than any other words of Baba that Baba said to her, were, do not be nervous or afraid. I will always be with you physically, which is really an astounding thing for Baba to say. It wasn't just, remember, I'm always with you. I will always be with you physically, as if she carried Baba around with her. And she would return to that again and again. And we found it so much written in her journals and in her books. So this book, this is the very first copy of the works of St. Teresa that she had, that Charles Purdom gave her in the early 60s. And this is Teresa's book, The Interior Castle, where Jane annotated, underlined things. And one of the things she kept writing in this book, quote, do not be nervous or afraid, for I shall be with you always physically. And she underlined the physical part. May her Baba, may her center, Lagoon Cabin Morning, sorry, May 30th, 1958.
Just before he left.
Just before he left, yeah.
But
yeah.
Could you also say what you asked Mother to promise you?
Oh, yeah, this was,
I love that.
This was in the hospital. She went to MUSC in Charleston to get surgery for her pancreatic cancer in August of '96. And in the days after the surgery, we stayed in this adjoining room to her hospital room, and Charles and Wendy had gone out to dinner in Charleston. And so I stayed with her that night. And, you know, it was Jane, so she was very concerned about her appearance, and she couldn't wash her hair. And she hated that because she was so particular about her hair. So what she did was she took a bottle of Chanel No. 5 and sprayed it in her hair, like to set her hair. And she said, that's an old theater trick. And and she said, you know, that was Baba's favorite cologne. And she said, when I first heard that, you know, I was surprised on two different levels. One was that Baba would express a preference for any fragrance, and two, that it would be Chanel No. 5. So, and then we had this nice talk, and I said, Jane, you know, I want you to promise something, you know, that, you know, first of all, I want more lifetimes with you. And so, like, can you promise me that you won't get finished with your lifetimes before I do? so that we can go through more together. And she stopped for a moment. She said, well, I don't know if I can promise that, dear. But I think we'll be with Baba again. We'll be with Baba next time he comes. And that meant everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, you know, Mother only had one longing, you know, after Baba came to her in the middle of the night, you know, on May 22nd, and revealed himself to her. It's interesting because she had seen him physically and would see him again physically the next day, but it was in the middle of the night, when not in his physical presence, that he really opened her eyes to who he is. And so the only thing after that Mother longed for was that if she could just care for his home. And she didn't mean the center writ large, actually. She really had more in mind just the house, you know, Baba's house And she was very focused on caring for that, which is why the story is so poignant that Christopher and Sandy's experience points to. That house, as you know, she loved to take people through it. That was really her greatest joy. The best part of her job for her was going into Baba's home and taking people around and caring for it and seeing to it and all that. She felt that that's what Baba had given her. You know how Baba sweetens things that are hard, and her life was hard. Her life at the center was hard. Her life before Baba was very hard. A lot of suffering, abuse, and terrible things. But then after Baba, of course, there was Elizabeth to give her love and support daily, and so Baba gave her many gifts to sweeten things. But then he took Elizabeth, and so it was hard because she was not cut out to be someone who saw people all the time and who was in charge of money and things like that. That just was not, she just wasn't cut out for that. And yet she was cut out for it. The fact that she wasn't cut out for it was why Baba put her there. I mean, typical of Baba. He always put people in things that, seemed to us to be ill-suited, but for his work, apparently, she had to do that. But he sweetened it by giving her the house across from his home and a view of his home and an opportunity to care for his home. And just, I can't help but mention this detail because it's so sweet and special. About the fence, years earlier, in the early 50s, Mother had seen a glimpse of a photograph of Baba in the local paper in Durham. Must have been when he came in 52. Her father was the editor of that paper. So naturally the household would always look at the paper, and there was a glimpse. And she doesn't quite remember the photo that well, except that it struck her. But that night, she had a dream. And in the dream, there appeared this fence. And she was on one side, and on the other side were all these people who were so happy and enjoying themselves, just full of love and happiness. And she was on the other side, excluded. That was her dream. And she forgot that dream. She forgot that dream for many years. And then the day came, I won't tell that whole story, where she came to the center for the first time in 1957, June of 57, just after Norina passed. And Elizabeth, of course, wanted to take her around to see different parts of the center after they had lunch or whatever they had in the original kitchen, she and Kitty and Mother. And Elizabeth drove her over to Baba's house and explained to her, this is where Baba stays when he comes. And this is his home. And so Mother got out of the car and she looked at the fence. And that was the fence. And it is a distinct fence, no question. But it was exactly the fence that she had dreamed about. Only this time, she was allowed in. So that's typical of Baba, who took such pains to let us know that he knows that it is all his, without saying so in so many words, because it means so much more when it comes naturally. And it also helps one to, frankly, endure all the challenges that he gives us, which sometimes are considerable. And for her, she had more than her portion, let me just say. So you want to ask about your meeting her?
Yeah. Betty, I'll keep this short, but Betty asked how I met Jane and then Charles. Charles said that Elizabeth put so much stock in dates, particular dates, and my date for first coming to the center was May 21st, 1987. And before I went into the center, Rita Slavic, who I came with, took me to see Jane. And it was just magical, from the beginning. We talked about St. Teresa, but one thing I remember vividly is that before I left, she walked me around her house and she stopped at the bookcase that's in the room that used to be Charles's bedroom, which she used as an office at that time. And she had propped on the bookshelf a picture of herself as an infant with her mother looking over her crib, her mother next to her. And we talked about that. And then, it struck me later that on April 11th, when she died, that photo was like a recreation of what would happen on April 11th, because I was in that same position as her mom, looking over the baby there, looking over Jane as she was going to Baba. So that was May 21st, which is also the anniversary of when Charles met Baba. And then I met Charles December of 1988, and I was volunteering at the center at that time, and under the instruction of Bob and Jane Brown and Jeff Wolverton, and they taught me how to polish furniture. And I was using liquid gold to polish the furniture in the barn. And Charles came in. It was the first time I laid eyes on him. He was giving a tour. First thing that came into my head was, oh, he looks so much like his mom, which he does. And then, there was an immediate spark and familiarity.
Scandal ensued. But I just back up a second. You actually were motivated to go to meet Jane because of St. Teresa.
Yeah, that's true, because I'd been reading a lot of her books.
By
and
Ben Slavic.
Ben Slavic, who had been a teacher at my high school, he and I kept in touch after I graduated. And he told me about Baba, and he said, if you're so interested in St. Teresa, you have to go to the Baba Center in Myrtle Beach, because there's this lady there who runs the center, and she is like a St. Teresa scholar, and you go into her house and it's kind of like a convent with all the Spanish stuff, which was partly these angels that are right behind us. And she's gone to Spain, and she's visited all of St. Teresa's 17 convents, and so that was one of the reasons I wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, the deep connection with St. Teresa among the three of us, and I'm sure Wendy as well, but I can only speak for myself and for Christopher. Mother actually felt that we were all deeply connected by her, and Mother read her every single day. Every single day she would read her.
Yeah. That book I brought out from the early 60s, and then this is the St. Teresa that she was reading right before she died, like in her last years. And, it also has like her annotation, her underlining. We love these because they say so much about her, which is that, she worked harder at her interior life than anyone I think we've ever known. And, when she would go back into her bedroom, when she wasn't visiting with people, this is what she was doing. She was studying and reading John of the Cross and Teresa, and she loved Pope John the 23rd and Thomas Merton. And that was her practice.
And it was very frustrating. I shouldn't keep saying that, but it just, I had a hard time with Mother sometimes, like many people did. She was not easy all the time, especially if one worked with her every day, or, you were her son. Those were not, those were different than people who came to the center and she would give out everything. She would just give it out, right? Especially, well, children were special to her, and they actually gave her love and energy in a way that sustained her. But when she gave out, she gave out. And then she would be exhausted and, drained. I can identify as a fellow introvert. It's really exhausting. I don't know how she did it all those years, but she did. Elizabeth didn't do that. She wouldn't do that. Elizabeth, so I identify with Elizabeth. She was very private and introverted, and she saw people when necessary. But unlike Kitty, it did not give her energy. And with Mother, she would give out and just be completely drained, and sometimes be frustrated and short, as a result. But my point is that she was frustrated a little bit with Baba about this, because on one level, in her meditation and her reading of Saint Teresa, she realized that she was given this work to do. And she, in fact, it was a cry from the heart to do this work, and Baba responded and gave her the work. I'm sure he prompted the cry as well. But what I'm saying is that it was very frustrating for her that she couldn't be the person she wanted to be. You know, she couldn't be Elizabeth, or, you know, whoever it is that she felt was the model of what it would be to be this disciple that people would recognize as, you know. So all of her complexities and challenges, I think it's sort of like Norina must have been. You know, people reacted to in very different ways, and good, bad, and so forth. So she had to live with that every day. And Baba didn't let go of that. Baba kept her doing that until she couldn't do it anymore. And he just wrung her out, and she knew that's what he was doing. But she also said, you know, I'm so unworthy, Baba, I'm so unworthy. But see, Baba said, well, no, you do it because I want you to do it. And this is what I've given you to do. You know, it's not that you are this kind of person or that kind of person. You are exactly what you're supposed to be for me to get my work done, including whatever work he's doing on other people. And he was doing a lot on other people through Mother, I think, through the years. So in other words, I think this is how her life is kind of an example, as was Norina's, of how Baba works through people as they are. It means he makes them who they are so that he can get his work done. And we might say, well, why doesn't he make them all into, you know, the kind of wonderful, perfect person that we want them to be? But instead, Baba uses who they are to do his work. And that's why Mother said over and over again to me through the years, you know, she had a lot of men fall in love with her in her, you know, 30 some years before meeting Baba, a lot of men. And even after that, men fell in love with her. And she said to me, you know, Baba, Charles, Baba was the first man who didn't love me in spite of who I am. Baba loved me because of who I am. So he gave her that gift to know deep inside that all that she felt was unworthy, all that she felt was, you know, not what she wanted to be, the person she wanted to be, was his work. You want to say?
One Hana?
Oh yeah, I think we should pass the torch. This has been lovely to share. So let's pass the torch.
You.
Charles and Christopher, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. It came to memory, and I don't know, so I thought I'd check. But my memory was that at some point when she first met Meher Baba, that Jane read to him from Jesus, the Son of Man, Mary Magdalene's story.
Yes.
And yes, and what you just said about Baba loving her for who she was.
Yes, that was you're right, Ruthie. That was a defining moment for her. And I'll say just a little. So it so happened that the idea was someone was going to read, Elizabeth or Jane was going to read from this book for Baba. And they each thought it was going to be them. And now you have to understand, they'd known each other for a year by this time. But, you know, Annie Boo wanted also to give something for, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, it was some kind of confusion about who was actually going to read the passage. And so they had a little bit of a struggle over this. And, you know, in front of Baba. And it was so sweet because Baba, I think that was the occasion, he took both of their heads, one head in one arm and one head in the other arm, and pulled them together like this and said, now that's enough. and then Jane got to read. So, which then was very meaningful because she selected, as you mentioned, it's a book those of you who don't know it, Gibran's book, of each chapter is a disciple or someone in Jesus' life describing what it was like to see him and to be with him. So it's very lovely. It's in present tense, you know, it's like, this is what it was like. And the chapter of Mary Magdalene, seeing Jesus, I'm sorry. It's so beautiful, seeing Jesus for the first time, what he was like. And of course, she saw his physical beauty. And that's what she was immediately, you know, attracted to, how beautiful he was in the garden, you know, seeing him for the, and it was Mother's story, you know. It was Mother's story because she had lived a life that many would say was like, you know, the Magdalene. And, you know, very, I need not say more, but to read that in front of Baba was everything to her. It was like her whole past life being poured out in front of him, physically, right there, and just for him to see. And of course he knew, but he wants us to know that he knows. It's not just that he knows. We can believe that or not, but Baba wants us to know, yes, I know. I know all you've been through. I know how unworthy you feel. I know what you've suffered. It's all me, it's all mine, and you're mine. And after she read it, Baba said, I hope I get this right. Baba said, I'm very touched by how you read this. How you read was so beautiful, Baba said. For you see, Jane, I was the Christ. No, for you see, Jane, I am the Christ. Yeah.
And she liked that you were born July 22nd.
Yeah, and of course, July 22nd, my birthday, is the Magdalene's feast day. So Mother loved that because I was a love child. I was born out of wedlock, and to her, that was like a confirmation that it was meant to be, and that it was truly a love child.
This is the book.
Oh,
Jesus.
that's the book. Jesus.
Yeah, I got a little, the Son of Man.
Yes.
Jesus, the Son of Man. Yeah, I just recently found it and read it at RT one morning. And you can't read it and not weep. It's so profound and just beautiful. So thank you so much, Charles, for, I would have never discovered it if it wasn't for your mom, this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe someone could read it somewhere later on in the program.
Okay. We'll see if we got time for that. That'd be great. Well, listen, before we go to Hans, Hana, Debbie Peterson is here, and she worked with Jane for years. So I'm glad she's here from California, and she was going to speak a little bit about her time with Jane. You ready, Han?
Yes,
Say Baba.
I'm ready, but I'm not ready because Charles and Christopher just made my heart break with joy and missing Jane and stories. You know, my job, I'm going to throw my script away. My job was just to be around and help out. I wanted so much to be at the center. I moved down from upstate New York when I was 19. I came to Baba when I was 17. I went to Darwin and Jean Shaw's meetings in Schenectady. And then I got an invitation to go to Myrtle Beach with Kevin Kentfield and Bob Emmerich. Kevin just came up to Saratoga and said, come on, you got to go with me. You've never been to Myrtle Beach. So that started my Myrtle Beach life. I moved down and immediately started to volunteer wherever I could. at Kitty and Elizabeth's and at Jane's, with the Happy Club especially. And what can I say? I mean, Jane was larger than life. I loved her so very much, and she loved me. And, you know, sometimes I would say things that associated somehow something with her and Elizabeth, that I don't know, well, like a problem. And she would snap at me, you know, no, you can't go there. Okay. So we started out, I started out just volunteering. And I was at Kitty and Elizabeth's bookstore, Kitty's bookstore one day at Dilruba. And Jane came in and she said, "Dear, would you like to work with me at the Pine Lodge? Because the Pine Lodge is going to be where guests are received. And would you like to do that?" And I just said, "Yeah, yes, I would." And she said, "Well, go see Elizabeth." So I went to Elizabeth's room and just stood there at the end of her bed. And she said, "Well, dear, as of Monday, you'll be working with Jane at Pine Lodge and you'll be receiving a salary." And I just floated out of the room. I was so happy. When I think of Jane, I can't help but think of children, because she loved children so very much. And I especially loved when the guests would arrive at the door of the Pine Lodge and there would be children, because then Jane's day was made, you know, and she spent lots of time with the children in the office. And she also spent time with Jim Myers and my son, Andrew. They had dates. She would come to the house and pick him up in her station wagon. And he just couldn't wait to go out the door to get in the car with Grammy Jane. That's what she asked him to call her, Grammy Jane. And then he would come home with toys and cars and, you know, colored pencils and paper. And he was so excited. He just totally adored her, which, you know, was wonderful. Let's see, I don't have my script because it's dissolved into the air, but I wanted to say, when we were working at Pine Lodge, there was a loud, this is just a fun story. There was a loud, raucous, screaming bird outside. It was so loud. And this just shows how much Jane knows about everything. So I went to the window and I saw a bird, no kidding. It was at least 3 feet. And it had a long white beak and red tuft here. And it was screech, screech, screech. And I ran to Jane, came in, and she said, oh yes, that's an ivory-billed woodpecker. And they're very, very rare. It's wonderful that you got to see it. It had gone, you know, it flew away. Let's see, Happy Club. So what?
I was just going to say that would have been amazing since they are extinct. So I hope that's true.
Oh, no. This is a long time ago, sweetie. This is in 1970.
I know, but they've been extinct for a long time. But I mean, I hope so, because birders still look for them, hoping that some will appear.
They look like the pileated.
They look like the pileated woodpeckers, but they do have the white beak.
Very, very big.
Yeah.
Those are at the center
Yeah.
of the
And
pileated.
really loud.
Yeah. So boy.
And I did look it up. So there were a few around that time. So we got to see one. I'm
That's
sticking with
amazing.
that story.
I love that story.
Isn't it good? Yeah. We had a lot of fun. You know, I used to take court. I used to do my own kind of shorthand when I started working with her at the house in your old room. And then I would type the letters, and they often had a lot of mistakes, typos. But she didn't care, and she never got mad at me about that. And we would have breaks and go into the living room and smoke cigarettes. And I loved those moments, because those late night moments were when I heard some of the stories that you and Christopher just told. And it would be muted light in the room. We'd both be smoking, and I just felt so blessed and so privileged to this being of Jane. She's enormous. She's an enormous soul. And I just felt so privileged to know her and work with her. Happy Club was also fabulous. She would go and get the Lee children, right? Very far away down in Pawleys Island. And after a while, I just took that over, and I gave her more time, and I got to know them really well. I'm still in touch with them after all these years. Ricky, it works for the government, special secret stuff. What else? I wish I had my notes. Anybody want to ask me a question or something?
I remember just coming to the door and being received by you.
Really?
Yes. Welcome to the center. You were always there as a person that welcomed us in. Yeah.
It was my privilege. And I don't know what to say. I'll never forget it. And I'll never stop loving Jane and Kitty and Elizabeth. I do have one story. When I stayed at, Charles, remember when I used to stay with Jane when you were gone, you and Wendy were gone? So one day I stayed in your room, and I used your little closet, and I got ready to go to the center, and I started walking in past Baba's house. As I passed Baba's house, this voice said, "What you're wearing is really ugly." And I went, "What?" And I just kept walking. You really look bad. That's a bad choice of shirts. And I just said, "Oh, shut up," and it kept happening. And I finally felt shamed about the shirt I was wearing. And so I went back to the house, and I opened the closet door, and smoke poured out, because Jane had put a pillow under the light bulb, and I forgot to shut the light off. So if that's not proof that Mayor Baba is in charge of his center, I don't know what is.
That's a wonderful story. I hadn't heard that story. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been a terrible story, but
Could have been a terrible story. Exactly. So my vanity, you see, he'll use anything. I didn't look good, so therefore I had to look good.
yeah. I spent most of my life in that closet, I mean,
I know about that, don't I? I was madly in love with Charles. Madly in love with Charles. And Jane was madly in love with me being madly in love with Charles. I'm still madly in love with you, Charles, and Christopher.
oh, thank
Us
you.
too.
Us too.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you. If you think of anything else, you can just speak up.
Sure.
We have some hands, so I'll go ahead and start. All right, sweet. If you think of anything. Peter?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. So I have so many great memories of Jane from at first being as a kid on the center. Like I've been going to the center since I was a baby, and to me, Jane always felt so natural. Getting to see Jane as like a kid, it almost felt that she came down to my level. I guess like partly because I guess Baba did that to many kids and whatnot. And I remember of good memories of like right in her house, she had these toy animals, and like I remember one being like a polar bear and a panda bear, and I remember playing with those. I remember she like played with them and whatnot, and I remember she even gave some animals like to us as kids, and my parents still have them in their office in Pennsylvania. And like the kids that come there play with them, and like especially the Amish kids and whatnot, so they love them. Another good memory of like being on the center and being connected with Jane as a kid was a lot of Easter's. They had the biggest Easter egg hunts, and of
Yeah.
course the Happy Club was involved with that. And Jane was so huge with the Happy Club, and I just remember like being on the playgrounds and like being at the Easter egg hunts, and then all of a sudden a car drives in the playgrounds, and we were like wondering, oh, whose car is that? And sure enough, that was Jane's. Like, it was really nice. She wanted to be there and like watch the kids and interact with the kids, and that was really special. She also told me and my brothers to call her Grammy Jane, which was really nice. So I always felt that like grandma connection with her. She was like a Baba grandma to me. Um, Later on, I was 12 that year. My birthday, April 10th, was the day before Easter that year. It was 1993, and we were on center. And I remember telling Jane, "Oh, it's my birthday," and whatnot, and so excited about that. And she was really generous to us. She let my brothers and I pick out paintings in her studio, and I picked out the one right in back of me on the wall there. It's one of my treasures to this day. It is Baba in the middle, and Monty on one side, and Mara on one side, and they're all very young looking, and it's a beautiful painting. And she signed the back of all of her paintings and wrote little notes to us and whatnot as well, which was really sweet. Um, and then years later, many years later, after I moved to Myrtle Beach, um, it was actually my 10th year anniversary in Myrtle Beach. It was 2015, 2016. I took a really great class through the local Chamber of Commerce called Leadership Grand Strand, and it was a 9 month program. It was a pretty intensive class. It took a lot of work, but it was very rewarding, and I made connections with about like 30 different people, most of whom I didn't know before the class. And one of our first parts of the class, we were to look at all the alumni that took the class before. And looking at that class list, I remember seeing Jane's name. I think she was in one of the early classes, if I remember correctly, like class 9 or 10. But I just remember seeing Jane Berry Haynes, and that was a connection to her as an adult. Like, what an honor to be in the same program that she was in Myrtle Beach. So, and even to this day, I still think about her, and she's definitely still a part of my heart. Thank you.
Wow. I've been admiring that painting ever since Zoom started and had no idea that was Jane's work.
Yeah, she was a really good artist.
Yeah, the one behind me over here, she gave to me and my former husband,
Oh,
Stephen. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I do remember one of the only conditions that she had when she gave us paintings as kids. She wanted my mom and dad to take pictures of the paintings and send them to India so the Montauk can see them. I do remember her asking us that, which my parents did.
So sweet. Oh, Peter,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. My gosh, all those years growing up with Jane, that must have just been, well, such a blessing. I'll just say quickly, because I want to say a million things, but I'll just say real fast. The first time I met her was in Pine Lodge. I walked down because you had to meet either Kitty, Jane, or Elizabeth while you stayed on the center, either when you got there or when you left or through your stay. And so I walked down because I had an appointment and walked in and I sat down and Jane was on the telephone with someone. And she was she was like fire. I mean, I recognize the fire in her because I have fire. And she was so on fire just to whom she was speaking. I don't know what she was saying or who it was, but she was so one pointed and just alive with this connection. And then when she was finished and hung up the phone, and she turned she turned all that on me, and it ignited me. Her love for Baba was so much fire in my world. So I'll just say that I had never seen anyone so focused and one pointed as Jane.
I
I've never
remember
seen-
that too.
Yeah,
I remember because not that I eavesdropped, but you know, it was, but she would share from the very depths of her soul with people, even new people, you know, that didn't know much about Baba. She would just, you know, testify, but not bad like that. But just, she shared her pure, deep, total love for God. And people would come out of the door weeping, you know, or hugging and crying and laughing and
Yeah.
just saying or going, wow. You know.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, Linda. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, this story occurred to me as you and Christopher were speaking, Charles, because you relate the meaning of things behind the stories that opens the heart and the understanding so much. And so this story takes place, and the meaning that just came to me as Jane was dying, which was my very first trip to the center. So I did not meet Jane in person. But here's the thing. She was dying, and I had just moved from Alaska with my 2 young kids to Oregon, and we had found out about Meher Baba at Nesquin Valley School through Marnie and Doug, and Harry Durham actually was the first person that introduced me to Baba. And I actually saw Baba at the school and walking on the beach when we were doing a beach cleanup with the kids to raise money to keep the school open. And so I came to the center, and I've always been insecure about making sure that my rides are in place. I hate to be trapped anywhere. In fact, always either rent a car or at this point, we were not flying into Myrtle, 50 miles away. And for some reason, I didn't have a ride back to the airport. And so I spread the word on the center that
Oh, we're gonna have to get the end of that story where it's one of those things with cliffhanger. I think she's gone, so we'll have to wait until she comes back near the rest.
I'm back. Am I back?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry. Anyway, so this person said, yes, I'm going. That will work great. But it's completely contingent on I am scheduled to see Jane. It was the day before she died. And if I get to see Jane, and the time works, then I'll take you to the airport. Otherwise, everything is off. I won't be flying. I will not be driving. If I get to see Jane, then I'll give you a ride. And I can't tell you more than that. It's contingent on how she's doing and if I'm allowed to see her or not. And that just made me crazy. And what came to me as I realized the love and also the honesty that you spoke to, Charles, of the difficulty of loving someone who has such a hard job to do, that Baba has given such a difficult thing, an introvert being given this opportunity being meet in person. And I think it has to do with, that, well, I was raised Catholic, and, that there was so much in that ceremony before I understood. I was such a seeker, but the Catholic Church did not fulfill that for me, that seeking. And so I've had this aversion to people that are revered for one reason or another. And I need to know what grants them that reverence. How did they earn that reverence? Anyway, this woman whom I don't resisted, somehow in the hour that we were supposed to leave, she was granted 5 minutes with Jane. And she came out completely weeping, and I'm standing there waiting. And she says, yes, we're going. And the relief that I had, overshadowed what I was seeing in front of me. She was on fire. She was a light, and also just shattered too. So anyway, somehow I helped her load her baggage into the car, and we took off for the airport. And she pulled over and she said, I can't drive. And I said, I'll drive. And even driving, the feeling in the car of love for this person I didn't know, and for who she loved beyond, Meher Baba, was so tangible that I've never forgotten it. And it changed the way I open myself to people that are revered, especially in the Baba community, that are so loved. So anyway, at Jane's dying, here's a revelation that is so important to me and opens my heart in a way that needed to be opened. So thank you.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Linda. So beautiful.
Jay Baba. Chris Barker.
Hey there. Yes, I've got a Jane story, and this one involves Hana, so her name will come up here. In 1969, I went to the Darshan, and then came back from the Darshan, and a month after the Darshan, I was drafted. I had gone home, as Baba said, for people to do after the Darshan, stayed a week at home in Texas, and then went to the center. So I was there at the center. A month after the Darshan, I got my draft notice. And so I wound up going into the Army, and then went through basic training and so forth. And then I got assigned to go to Vietnam. And so I was one of the first or second young Baba lovers from the Baba community who wound up going to Vietnam. I know Jim went, but I can't remember if he went first or if I went. I think I went first. But so I spent a long year in Vietnam, and then came back from Vietnam, and came. The first thing that I wanted to do, I had a break there in the Army, some time off, was to go to the center. So I finally got to the center after a year in Vietnam, and got back to the place that had meant so much to me and the people that had meant so much to me. So I came to Pine Lodge, rushed into Pine Lodge, and Jane was behind the desk there. And Jane jumped up and she gave me an embrace that had so much of Baba's love in it that it just, it was just an incredible embrace. It's one of those embraces that I have remembered all my life. And it was just a powerful moment. And afterwards, Debbie had been standing there in the office and watching all this. And a day or two later, she said, "You two embrace like long lost lovers." And, and that's the way I felt. Baba just gave me so much through that. And that was just one instance of how lovely Jane was. to me, to my family later, to our daughter and everything. While I was there at the center a lot in the 70s, I took some pictures, and here's a picture of Jane that I took. And I don't think anybody's ever seen this because I
Beautiful.
only recently scanned this picture.
Beautiful.
And here's another one.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Happy Club,
Look at that.
Happy Club.
Jane and Wendy. So our
Could you
little,
hold the Jane and Wendy up one more time? Because I didn't see it well. Oh my gosh. Oh, so
the Happy
beautiful.
Club kids are in the background there.
Yeah.
Yep. So she was just a remarkable person, not an ordinary person at all. Very filled with Baba's presence and just a unique person, just like her son and son-in-law and daughter, Jay Baba.
It's so beautiful, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, that first one looked like Jane when I first met her at the boathouse. It was in 1970, maybe 71, 72. So beautiful.
You know, I have to just, Chris and Ann are such amazing, dear, sweet people. I'm so happy to see them. That was so touching. But I wanted to say that when Mother first met Baba, Baba turned to Anita and said, "What do you think of Jane?" This is in the Lagoon Cabin. You know, Bob always turned to Anita for, you know, he could always count on her for response, you know, that anyway, they had a special kind of interaction. And so he said, "What do you think, Anita?" And Anita, of course, Paris and glamour and, you know, art, world of the arts, you know, all of that. So, you know, it was kind of natural. Here's an actress and all that who's very glamorous and beautiful. Mother was very beautiful at that in those days. And so he turned to Anita and said, so Anita, what do you think of Jane? And she said, "Oh, very beautiful, Baba. Very beautiful." And Baba said, yes, she is beautiful. But she's even more beautiful inside.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Charles, I'm trying to think, is there a place somewhere where there is your mom's story about meeting Baba? Is there something written somewhere that I just can't?
Yes, but sadly, there is Mother's book, but it's just not available anymore. And I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, in Letters of Love, it's surprising because most people just flip to the letters, which are fascinating, but she does have a narrative in there of meeting Baba and her times with Baba in both 58 and 62. So that's really the best resource. And someday we've got to get it reprinted. She worked on that in her last year or so and was rushing to get it finished before she died. You know, she knew her time was short, so that she never saw it published, but she saw the final proof of it, which made her very, very happy. She just wanted all of that to be in one place, especially correspondence from Elizabeth and Purdom and these people. So it's quite a treasure. But anyway, someday it'll maybe be available again. But we don't have any more copies.
Well, the selfish me is just so happy that I have a copy. I'm going to go read the story when we finish. Thanks, Charles. Judy? Hi.
Hi there.
Jay Baba.
And I must start with a thank you to Charles and Christopher for their for all the love that they allow to flow, Baba's love to flow through what their shares are. I have a vignette of Jane from the Maribod perspective. And that is that I was, living and working over at Maribod on what I'm almost sure was Jane's last visit to Maribod in 1995. Charles, you can maybe confirm that. And I observed something very beautiful, which was the way that Baba inspired his sister Mani to roll out the red carpet for Jane in a way. In all of my years in India, I didn't see before or after at every possible public time. And of course, this was a time of great stress and tension in the Myrtle Beach situation. And a good example of that was at Ladies' Arty, that in those days happened every 2 weeks. The women Mandali would come, as I think almost all of you know, from Marazad and have darshan at 10 in the morning, do the prayers and so forth at Baba's Samadhi. And the tradition always was that the women Mandali, the front row in front of the Samadhi where you could look in those days it was Mani and Goher and Meru and the others would all sit in that front row, but not when Jane was there. I observed that she was the only woman that Mani ever invited and insisted on her sitting right next to her for that. And for every time they were together in Mandali Hall at Marazad, Jane was right next to, and only the resident women Mandali in those days were right next to Mani, if the women were in the hall. And there were so many other ways that Mani clearly, publicly honored Jane, and I interpreted it also her son Charles, with love that just poured forth. It was beautiful to behold.
So beautiful, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, but very beautiful. I mean, just say that Mani was Jane's sister,
Absolutely.
and more than just saying that. I mean, it was a very deep connection they had, very close, and even, well, throughout everything, Mani took it as her role to support Jane. And she took it as from Baba. In Baba's time, Baba had Mani be the one to write to Jane and to us. She was our direct link to Baba in those days. And they were so very close. And Mother also supported Mani in many, many ways and showed her unconditional love. And so it was that kind of reciprocal relationship that they had. And when the time was most difficult during that period, when she went to India, Mani didn't fully, whatever Mani had to deal with in terms of her struggle about the issues that were raised, she put all of it aside and she knew what Baba wanted. And she knew Baba wanted her to give Jane and me and Christopher her fullest love and support, whatever else, which she did. And she wrote and talked about Christopher as sending love to the newest member of the family. So she made a tremendous effort at some cost and some, division right there at Meherazad. It didn't bother her. She stood with Mother through the whole thing. She and Erich, I have to say, Erich also, who, they may have whatever ideas or thoughts they had about these issues in their background or whatever, they rose above it all and did what they felt Baba wanted them to do. Yeah.
And Moni could not have done anything, even if she had spoken the words, to communicate more deeply that Jane is one of us, meaning the women Mandali, and my sister. It was, I feel blessed to have been able to be present for, imbibe that love between them.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, there's a photo in that video that someone sent, I think it was Hana sent me, of Moni and Jane sitting outside on the veranda in India, and they're laughing in such a glorious way together. And it just coincided with, in the song Buzz was singing, of surrender. And it really made me feel the surrender that I know Baba wants from us all. And that was the look on their faces of joy and exultation together. Anyway, just a thought. Lenita, Jai Baba.
Okay, Jai Baba.
There you
So
are.
it's a very short story. I have a very few memories of Jane because I came to the center in 1993, and she was there, And my late husband, Ira Gross, we were just dating for about a year, and then I had to see her because that was a protocol. You're going to see Jane the first time you come to the center. So he took me there to meet her and to have an interview. But and then we are sitting there, and she didn't say much to me. She just looked at me with this I felt like approval in her eyes, in her face. She smiled at me, and we kind of bonded in our eyes. Me when our eyes met. And she was very beautiful. But the thing that was important in this meeting is that she knew Ira because he has been to the center before me. So she said to him, "Are you planning to marry this lady?" She knew we were just dating. And he was like, "What?" He was like, because we never spoke about marriage until that day. We were just dating. And he was like, "What?" And I look at him and I was like, "What?" We are like very surprised that she said that, we never expect. So, and he said yes. And I was like, yes, yes. So she was not the reason, but she pushed us, because then when we left the room, Ira said to me, "Did you hear her, right? So we're gonna get married?" And I said, "This is a proposal?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, okay." And then he made a little scene. He went down on his knees and get a little piece of grass, and he made a little band that he put in my finger, and we were like, I was crying, I was so happy. But I want to show you what she gave to us that day. That very day, she gave us a painting that she painted. It's right here in my living room. It's in my living room, until this day. We always had, when you live in New York for 25 years, we had in our living room. And now I brought with me to Myrtle Beach, and it's here. Can you guys see it?
Only the bottom portion. I can only see Baba's hand. I can't see the whole photo.
Yeah, Ruth, how you Can you see this? The picture?
Frozen.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Hey,
Tell me
Adrian.
what I can do. Tell me what do I do? Push up or up? Go up and
It's there.
huh? What I do? What should I do?
It looks great. We
Go
can
back? Go back
Now
or
it's
down?
good. Now it's good.
Ruth,
Now
tell
it's
me.
good.
I guess everybody's saying it's good. I can't see because people are talking. You go ahead and talk.
Can
and
see?
it'll-
Can you see everyone? Charles,
Yes,
can you
Look
see?
at the gallery. Look at
Ooh.
the gallery. Ruth.
My goodness, it's gorgeous, Lenita.
Yes, it's beautiful. Oh, yeah.
It's
Honestly.
beautiful. I
Oh,
love this painting. And
Oh my
she's
God.
gonna be here in my living room the day I die.
Just unbelievable.
Okay, that's my story. That's my story with Jane. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, guys. Jay Meher Baba.
Charles, I didn't realize how prolific, how much painting she really did. Wow. Everybody I mean, it's amazing. Anyway. All right. VJ.
Oh, Charlie Mills.
Yeah, Charlie Mills. That's right.
He taught her, and yeah, she didn't think she was any good, so she was amazed that people wanted them. But she got quite good.
Yeah, she did get quite good, but we were amazed that she would just give them away with love. Yeah.
Well, no, she would never sell a painting.
Unreal. All right, BJ.
Hi, Jai Baba everyone, Jai Baba Charles.
Sweetheart.
And I am here to pay my respect and love and gratitude to these great ladies. And I have a memory with the Jane hands, sweet memory. This is a picture when she invited me for the tea on the center. I was a guest on the center on the strength of Adiji's recommendation. And really the love and attention I got from those great ladies, that's amazing. And till today, my eyes get wet. It was not just Charles' mother, but she is the godmother of entire Baba community. And I love to remember her every year, and still she's in my heart. This picture is there with last 42 years with me. Maybe Charles remembers it. And I had many sessions with her, and she was so took interest in telling her stories of India, Baba. And once I had a chance to go to a movie with Elizabeth, Kitty, Jane, and myself. And maybe Dana Ferry was there, and someone else. And we were packed sitting in a car. We four were sitting in the back, like first Elizabeth, Kitty, Jane, and myself, and going to the movie. It was like a date with the lady, and I was so thrilled. And then Elizabeth asked me some question. And my voice, see, I was so thrilled with those great ladies. My voice changed, very just thrilling voice. And Jane tells Elizabeth like this, listen to his voice. And very special time. I think I had the best time with them, those great ladies. And my salutations. I love them. I revere them, and always in my heart. That's what I would like to say. Jai Baba.
Jay Baba.
Jay Baba, VJ. That was beautiful. All right. Jeff and Nan, Jay Baba.
Okay.
Well, Jeff, you're muted all of a sudden.
Okay.
Better.
I said, I hope I can get through this all right.
Yeah, no, it's okay if you don't.
When I first, a buddy of mine and I came to the center, this is 1970. Jane was there at the Pine Lodge and she signed us in. And we started coming from then on, from Schenectady down about about once a month, we would come down, and I got into doing from the very beginning, Happy Club, you know, and, you know, and the Happy Club, if you don't know, there are some communities in Myrtle Beach that Elizabeth and Jane had great connection with, the whole community. And they would bring up these kids every Saturday. And actually it was Wendy who started this back in the 60s. And so we would if you can imagine, you know, when popcorn reaches that stage, you know, for a long time, it's just like, you know, simmering, and then it starts popping. Well, as soon as the doors opened at the refectory, you know, these kids, sometimes 100 kids on holidays, and maybe 35 most of the time. But, you know, they really loved and adored her, and she was Miss Jane. And she and I did this, and other people, any of the guests, for, I don't know, up and for 25 years or something. I don't know. It's a long time. And, you know, even to this day, sometimes I'll show one of the old Happy Club kids around the center and to where we used to do all these activities, you know, the sports and the arts and crafts and everything. And they just say, oh, yeah, oh man, it's so sad, you know. And we go around all the places. And one of the things that was beautiful, I mean, she had such a love for these kids and they loved her. And it's, I mean, a whole caravan sometimes of cars would go down and pick up these kids. And after Jane passed on, we did it for another year, but she was the one who had the inspiration and got people involved and the whole community, and it kind of faded out. We couldn't carry it on the way Jane did with her inspiration. And one of the kind of unknown aspects of Jane is she was an incredible letter writer. She wrote
Hundreds of letters.
thousands of letters. I mean, there was no email back then. And she sent letters all to so many people across the country, people who wouldn't be able to come to the center for years and everything. And she was a lifeline. Those letters were so loving. I mean, if you took all the letters that she wrote, you could fill up the lagoon cabin. Anyway, I don't know if I can go on that anymore. But here's one thing is, there was a time, you know, we did a Happy Club together. We did programs together. We did a whole lot for years and years. And there was one time when I felt some real differences with her. I was really very, I was going to have to confront her at one point, and there would be consequences. I kind of sat on it for maybe a year or two, and I was going to have to level with her, so to speak. Anyway, so right around that time, I went to India, and as it turned out, on my last day saying goodbye at Merzad, I said, and Erich was right there at the bus, and we're just about to hug, and I was going to be coming back to the West. And I said I was having a lot of trouble with Jane, And I had a feeling that I could really jeopardize my job at the center if I spoke out. And Erich said, I said, what can I do? He said, you have to win her respect. You have to win her respect. And he embraced me, and I was on the bus and I was coming back. And I said, win her respect. What does that mean? I could not understand. Win her respect. I've done all these things. If she doesn't respect me for all these years, what does he mean? So that was floating around in my consciousness for a couple of years. And one day I was walking by Baba's house, and this was flashed to me. As a human being, as one human being to another, I will never let Jane Haynes down. I'll give her my best. And immediately I got on a walkie-talkie, Jane wants you to call her. And I thought, wow, how did I came to that? And that very moment is when she called. And I knew then I had won her respect. And then from then on, the latter part of her life, which was a lot of pain and suffering, she was so open to any moral and spiritual support I gave her to give her. And that relationship that was so profound and intimate in Baba that I consider it one of the greatest, most intimate relationships for me in this life. So I finally won her respect, but it had to come from me. Anyway.
Jeff, I'm so touched that you would share that. You have no idea. And I just want to say, you know, from where I sit, I don't know anybody who has given their life to the center as you have, that Mother respected and loved more. She saw all that you did that others don't see. Or others may think, you know, well, what is that? What is he doing? She saw it and she appreciated it and valued it. And so that's why it's particularly meaningful to me that you share this, because that's what I heard and saw from her. And she loved you so very much. She loved you so much.
Lucy, I have a few quick stories, but I could wait till later, or I could say them now.
Well, I was going to ask you next. You're reading my heart anyway. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you.
I came in 1991, and Jane said something to me, which I realize now was just the perfect. She was so welcoming as she was to everyone, but she didn't. You know, she told me, we talked about Saint Teresa, we talked about Spain, but she said something like, a deer came to the door this morning, and I think he was telling me you were coming. And it was just like the perfect thing. She couldn't have said anything better to me, you know. And to me, it was like, you could say it was coded information, but instead of, you know, it was like saying, I overlook all your faults. I mean, that's how I interpreted it, you know, dear, love you, or something like that. It was like, I see you who you really are. That's how I heard it. And later I got to model for her and Wendy McCartney when they were painting. And it was just great because it was like I was invisible. And I worked with her at Happy Club some, and I did other things, but I got to see her when she was goofing off. And they were just had such a good time together. They had such a great relationship, and I got to just be there in that. That was neat. I'm really thankful. And then a year after I came to Baba, my first cousin was murdered, and it was all over the newspapers and Washington D.C. and it was all over. And it went on for a long time because her body was taken. She, 22-year-old, and a little while later, her mother and brother came to the center. Not followers of Baba, but spiritual people, always spiritual people. And Jane was, and they were, not surprisingly, in grief. I don't even know if the body had been found by then, but anyways, she was just remarkable with them. I mean, that's a hard, how do you talk to somebody who's lost their daughter and their sister? And she was just so perfect and gracious, and so took the time and gave of herself. So I'm very thankful for her in lots of ways. Yeah. And for a lot of the things you said, Charles, this morning that were just beautifully said, and things I needed to hear, and just I love the way I don't even know the word for that. You bring it very, the details. You make me understand Baba more, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Well, thank you.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Nan. That was beautiful. Yeah, Jane's, like Hana said at the beginning, she's just such an enormous soul that she encompassed so much of our lives in so many aspects. Thank you for bringing it, Nan. And Jeff. We love you both. Jai Baba. Chitra. Good morning. Chitra, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Jai
Okay.
Baba.
I have just a couple of short sharings about Jane. Of course, our children were involved with Happy Club every time we came, and but one of the most profound things that happened with us was we went to Baba's house every week, and we always went early to hear Jane's, so that we could have Jane's tour. And as soon as we came in, she would always look at my children, Huma and Naja, at the time, and say, remember, oh, I'm sorry, the wind just blew flowers over. Remember every word I say, because you will be doing this tour when you are older. And it'll be up to you to remember all these stories about Baba. And so they would just, take it very seriously. And so would I. We would even repeat the stories on the way home. And I loved that she gave them that charge to do, that it was up to them to remember these stories of Baba. This is important. It's not just, oh, we're hearing these stories again and again. It was the reason we hear it every time we come. Every month we would come for a long time, was so that we would remember them. They would remember them. And of course, they loved her. But a stunning experience happened. We were living in Charlotte at the time, and one of our fellow Baba lovers who lived there was a man named Linwood Sawyer. He's now called Shiva. And he worked for the Charlotte Disturber, he called it, the newspaper, as a reporter, but he also was a playwright. So he got his first play to be put on, and his biggest wish was that Jane come for it, which she did. So opening night, we were there, our Gil and I, and the kids came, even though they were little, and Linwood and his wife and Jane. And Jane was, I was shocked. I was kind of an old hippie, and my sense of fashion has never been there and stuff like that. And Jane came so stunningly beautiful. She had, pearls, and her hair was coiffed, and a big cleavage, and I was shocked about the cleavage because, never having one, I was, and and she just was bigger than life and so present for Linwood. And he was like a child whose parents had finally come, you know. He was so thrilled with her being there, and she was so gracious. And afterwards we went out for coffee or something, and she critiqued the play in a very professional, positive way for him. And it was so much, I felt, you know, like you did around Mandali, that she was representing Baba, and she was representing Baba to Linwood in his whole life, and to all of us, you know, that if Baba could have been there, he would have been there, but he sent Jane. That's the way we felt. Thank you.
Chitra, that was beautiful. That's exactly how it felt, isn't it? You really said it. All right, Betty. Jai Baba, Chitra. Go ahead, Betty.
Baba.
Jai Baba.
The first and only time our family went to the center was, I think it was 1990. My husband and three of our kids, a couple of them were my stepkids. We went to the center and went to visit Jane. And their mom had just passed. So we went in to talk to Jane, and I don't know how it seemed to be very soon. Jane was sharing in this incredible way. She was telling her story of her early life, her first marriage. I mean, profoundly. And I was so amazed that she would share in that detail to people she had just met. And she finally commented, she said, "I don't know why I'm telling you all this." And I said, "I do, Jane. It's because these children have just lost their mother." And oh my goodness. It just, she took them on as if we were her own family. We were there maybe a week and a half. She took every opportunity to. I know we had a teenage daughter, Rain, with us, and her grandson Mark was there, and she kept putting them together, hoping they might get to know each other. She took incredible care of us, and our little guy, I'll never forget the image of, his name is Gary, big heart, laying on her floor, petting the cat BB and just weeping. It was really a remarkable, profound sharing. And she just took us on that week that we were there. It was just amazing. Truly one of my profound experiences with Baba. So she sent us all home with the little lammy, the picture that she must have, and a little note to every one of us. It was a phenomenal, profound time. So that's all. Jai Baba.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Thank you.
Charles, I have wanted to tell you this story, and we had kind of somehow the opportunity was missed several times. I mean, I was so amazing and profound that she would share like that. So, yeah.
Well, you know, what it brings to mind is how, as much as I appreciated my mother, Jane, it's one never knows what Baba's doing, you know, and what detail and depth Baba will go to do what he needs to do. So hearing you talk about that is a reminder that I, you know, as much as I admire and knew her, I mean, it brings something new and deep to my experience of her. So thank you. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say something too, that, you know, Jane was one of those people who really embodied kindness, consideration, sensitivity for others. So you know, I learned, these are the ones that tried to teach me. I don't know what I have now, but whatever I have now is modeled from Jane and a few of the others that were there. So I'm just grateful. Beautiful story, Betty. Mihal, good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good night also. I wasn't thinking I wanted to be in this Zoom, and almost did not work out because friends were supposed to come, but then it was canceled. And I wasn't going to share, but Baba really wants me to share. So I came to Myrtle Beach in 1991 when that night that I slept, that morning that I was sleeping still, Kitty Davy passed away, and I felt that she was passing through the cabin, and I was wondering if there were ghosts in Myrtle Beach. And when I went out, because I was so awake from that, someone told me that she passed away. So of course, Jane was very busy with all the preparations, but she called me to a meeting, and it was morning, and I think she was having her coffee, and she was still in a dressing gown, and she was the most majestic person I ever met. In her being, she was just flowing, just sitting in that chair with a dressing gown and coffee, and just flowing. And it was so very special. Now that this Zoom is going on, I think when I went to Baba's house, I think she was the one who was showing me about. And she opened the case where Baba, where the pillow was, where his blood is on the pillow, and also told me the story of the Bible with a flower inside it. And I was really moved. And I was moved from this whole thing because it was my first and only time in Myrtle Beach. And I felt Baba, and I'm very connected to Baba Samadhi. And I felt Baba differently, completely different in Myrtle Beach. Like he was wearing a gown of flowers and just walking with a whole gown of these flowers and nature in this place, which is Myrtle Beach. And it was a very special time. That time also Jeff had a birthday. I was moved by Baba to go in the morning, and early in the morning, to the cabin there and just give him a card. And he said, "Oh, it's my birthday." And it was very, very moving. And I was in all the ceremonies of Kitty, which was also very special. And being in Israel is being in the outskirts of the Baba world. No Mandali came here, no Mandali were here, no, you know. So all the tidbits that we could get, the ones who wanted to, was just, you know, just reaching out and to see how much we can imbibe from the world of all this. And I must say that one of the things that moved me to talk here, and probably Baba because he wanted me to, is that when I was a child, or until today, I don't cry when it's sad. I don't cry when things are sad. I cry when things are right, when they're right, when the hearts are open, when people are with each other. That's what makes me cry. That's what opens my heart. And I was crying here when you were talking so much, you know, because it is so moving and it's so healing to meet people who open their hearts and are so transparent and so loving and so candid and so open with all the things in their hearts and all the things in their life, which might look nice or might look not so nice. And I was really touched by my visit in Myrtle Beach, because my heart was completely with Baba Samadhi and still is. Then I would go there every time I had some money. But Myrtle Beach it stayed so strong in my heart because of that very special visit. And when I heard of the trouble that Jane went through and you went through, Charles and Christopher, I was really disturbed by that, very disturbed. And I wrote a letter to Jane and I said, Myrtle Beach, all its time, you will be there. All its time, you spend so much time there. You're part of, like the trees there, like the earth there, like the sky there, like the cabins there. And that's what I wrote. That cannot be taken because you are there. You are there. You are part of Myrtle Beach being Myrtle Beach. And same with Jeff, that I remember that he had also some same thing taken from his beauty, and I felt the same. So I learned through the years. I came to Baba when I was 1988. I learned through the years that Baba does that especially for his lovers. He takes what they like. He takes it away because he wants us to be only loving him and how do you say, that nothing will stand between us and him. No love that we have, no relations that we have, no family that we have, nothing, no garden that we tend to, no. And so I can understand that was what he did. It was not what people did, and it was not. It was that he's doing that for us and showing us again, well, do you care more for this or do you care for me? Will something stand between me and you? And I love that in him. I love that in him. And it's not always easy, but it's so beautiful. And a friend of mine who's not a Baba lover, but said that Baba loves her. She said it's a horrendous and wonderful journey. Yeah. So thank you. And thank you for the shares. Wow. Thank you for the open hearts. Thank you for this beauty. All of you, Jeff and Betty and Christopher and Charles and Christopher and Charles and all who shared their heart out, their heart, just opened the heart. And it's beautiful. It's just so beautiful. Thank you.
I'm so glad you shared. It's so beautiful because you go right, what Baba had you share goes right to the heart of what Baba's work is with us. I mean, you put it so beautifully. I think that's exactly what Baba is doing. He says, I am not the one to give, I'm the one to take.
Right.
But then, as Elizabeth used to remind me as a child, when something would happen and I would feel something was taken, she'd say, well, Charles, just remember, Baba will take the rhinestones, but he will give the diamond.
Wow.
That's right.
He will give.
He gives so much beauty. He does.
Yeah,
and yeah.
He takes what's not real, but he gives us what's real. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vihal. That was beautiful. Does anybody remember going to tea at Jane's and she would have those Tiffany teacups?
Yes.
Oh my God, I was always so frightened, and she'd have me carry one to someone. Oh, take this to Aunt Todd, would you, Ruth? And I was so frightened of those cups, but thank you, Baba. I never broke one. Dana, Jay Baba.
Oh, I really don't know how to follow all this. So, everything that could be said has been said, I think. And Jane was very, very dear to me over many, many years. And when Jeff started talking about her letter writing, there were two things I was going to say, and I wanted to keep it brief because there's so many of us that Jane meant so much to, but she was so generous to me in so many ways. But I was going to mention the letter writing too. She wrote me many beautiful letters of encouragement, even when I was living right there. So I know she was writing other people all the time. She was a wonderful writer, just a wonderful writer, such encouragement in her words, so much Baba, so much love just poured out in her letters. But the other thing I had to mention, which has also been mentioned by others and Jeff included, was her work in the downtown African-American community, which I also worked with her in. And then when Baba called her up to be at the center full-time, she encouraged me to remain in that work, which I did for some time. But I was sort of, Baba dispatched her into the community as his ambassador, I think. And then I sort of became a little outreach of her. And so when the people greeted me in the community, they greeted me with so much love, and it really was for Jane that love was directed. And every single person that I saw, and there were hundreds of people that we served in the clinic, everybody who saw me would say, "Happy Club," and "How's Miss Jane? How's Miss Jane? How's Miss Kitty? How's Miss Jane? Give my love to Miss Jane." I mean, you just could expect this was part of the communication with any single person that you would run into there. And to this day, when you're checking out of the Winn-Dixie or someplace like that, there'll be ex-Happy Clubbers working the cash registers there, and they'll see you coming and say, "Happy Club, Happy Club." But Jane, it's really hard for me to talk about Jane. She was very involved with many, many aspects of my life. And I think the greatest gift she gave me was, I felt she trusted me, and she entrusted me with a certain amount of work, which was extremely meaningful personally. And as I say, hearts have been so open here and people have said such beautiful things. I'll just start crying if I go into it any more depths, because I've been near tears the whole time ever since Charles and Christopher spoke. And everybody's been so open-hearted, as Jane was. And Jane knew she had a gift for touching the heart. That was one of her great personal gifts. She knew how to touch people's hearts. And she did that, and Baba used it for his work. And she certainly did that with my heart. Anyway, I think I'll just say Jai Baba and close there, because there are others waiting to speak.
Jai Baba, Dana, thank you. I love that photograph of Jane at Happy Club holding, I think it might be a grandson, and then there are two of the children from the community there with her. It's just such a beautiful photo. It says a million things to me. Thank you for bringing it. She always seemed to have a project going on, always had a project. Karen, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everyone. I have a few things to share. I remember vividly Jane being at Baba's house every Sunday and being the one to give tours of his house. I also have a very sweet remembrance of being at Kitty's 100th birthday. And Jane was sitting on one side of her and Wendy on the other side. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful sight. Very sweet. She was a beautiful, very gentle, very loving woman. My two stories are not necessarily center stories, but I'd like to share them. They're community Jane Haynes stories. I think that I've mentioned the first one to Charles on a few occasions. In 1972, November, I actually came to Myrtle Beach, not as a Baba person, but through the Vista program. And the very first week that we were there, Jane invited all of us to come to her house for tea to talk about the, working in the community and helping in the community. I do remember looking out the window and seeing the fence around her neighbor's house, which I thought was fascinating because I'd never seen a fence like that, only to find out later that in fact was Baba's house. But there was a woman in Bucksport Marina who had cancer, and I was living outside Conway, and Jane would call me periodically to take this woman to her doctor's appointments in Myrtle Beach. So that's one community story. And then in 1977 fall, I was teaching at Myrtle Heights Elementary. I had a 2nd grade class. And when school was over and the children waiting for the bus, it was quite nice. They waited in the classroom and watched cartoons. Well, one day I totally forgot. I didn't hear the announcement. So the bus came and left, and there I was with these children. So I piled them into my little yellow VW Bug to take them home. And in the middle of the car, you know, where the steering wheel and glove compartment are, but in the center, I had a BABA button. So when we pulled into the neighborhood for me to deliver the children, more children came to see who was coming in, who was bringing these children as they were getting out of my car. And they came to the windows and they saw Baba's picture inside. And they very sweetly said, "Are you taking us to Happy Club?" So I just wanted to share those lovely memories that I have of Jane Haynes. Jai Baba to everyone.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, that's what I mean. She just always seemed to be busy in the community. Yeah, Sue Chapman, Jai Baba.
I said it was for the community.
Jai Baba, sorry, it took me a moment there.
That's all right.
I wasn't going to speak at all, but I've been so moved by everything everyone said. And there's been resonance with different people, different ones. I first came to the center in '84 after a very warm invitation from Wendy. And I was a new kid on the block and very gauche. And you all know what it's like when you walk around the center trails and you're high with everybody and dizzy in your head and heart. And so on the first Sunday morning, when I was to go to Barbara's house for the first time, I had no consciousness of really what I was doing. And I stumbled through the screen door, and Jane was sitting on the welcome chair, and there were many new people sitting on the carpet. And she looked up and she said, "Oh, my dear," I can't evoke her beautiful voice, but she said, "Oh, we were waiting for you." I think it was Chitra that said Jane had the capacity to embody Mandali presence, Barbara's presence very fully. And I felt in that moment that really it was Barbara welcoming me home. It was Barbara waiting for me. It was Barbara greeting me through her very loving, gracious presence. And it didn't really stop there. I didn't really understand the full picture, but of course she carried on with her tour, and I was amazed that anybody would wait for me anywhere in this life. So that was extremely profound, but she did continue to be encouraging in many ways. She did correspond a couple of times when challenges had come up, and she was most wonderful in the words of encouragement she gave me. And of course, years later, when I came to read her book, it was like a whole other layer of Jane that, you know, Charles alluded to her privacy and how much was hidden. And I felt that wondrous book just opened herself to the rest of the world to witness more fully. And I'm so grateful she did that book at great pains to herself at the end of her life. And I'm so grateful to be sharing everybody has given. I get very emotional when I do this, so I usually keep quiet. So thank you all.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sue.
Well, all right. Elizabeth? Sue, thank you. You just hit it on the head. I saw a butterfly this morning, Charles, before we even started, the first yellow butterfly. And so I just went by again thinking of Wendy.
Hi.
Hi.
So I just have a short story. So when I first started coming to the center, it was 1985. And at that time, we went to see Kitty because Elizabeth had already passed. And so I was still in Washington, D.C. And then after that, in 92, I went to San Antonio, Texas, and was there in Texas for about 10 years before returning to the North Carolina area in 2002. So the point is, I didn't get to go to the center much at all. So I was really starved. But in the early days that I went there, one of the first times I was invited to Jane's to talk. I can't remember why. And it lasted some time. And basically, I ended up telling her about some really some tragedies in our family. We had multiple. I would say we had 3 major tragedies before I was the age of 13 or 14. Lots of really difficult situations, which I really don't want to go into, but because they're very personal. But she suggested, first of all, she immediately took me in and was a comfort to me and said, you really need to be blah, blah, blah. And she made an arrangement for me to be able to stay at the guest house for one, which was huge because I was new. I mean, therefore, she said to me, that's for old ones and close ones. But she somehow made a determination that I should be there. And then she suggested, I think it was Jane who suggested that I write a letter to Mara, which I did. I wrote a 17 or 18 page letter to Mara talking about these events. And believe it or not, I got a letter back. It was like a page and a half. And I still have that letter. I would need to find it, but of course it's a treasure. And you don't really know how much those things really mean. Sometimes until years later, you just don't get it. You know, it's like I've also been thinking about how many connection points I had with Mondley that I didn't even recognize. You know, starting from 1978, I thought I became a Baba lover in 85, but there were all these touch points. And so all I'm saying is Jane was major in my relationship with Baba, and to think that Mira wrote me, I still can't get over it. But that someone so small could receive a letter. No, it was very supportive, very sweet. And of course, I was early on my path. I was having a hard time accepting Baba as God. And she said, just take him as your friend. He will be the best one you ever have. And I think it was either Jane or Mara or someone who told me to stay close to Wendy. And of course, I already felt close to Wendy and Buzz and Charles because we were all part of the Mayor Baba Washington group. So, and I've just always felt close to them. But anyway, Jane was major in my life. I adored Jane and loved her. And I just did not get to see her later on because that was the time I was away in the Baba Desert of Texas at the time. Jai Baba, thank you.
Jai Baba, Elizabeth, that was beautiful. Thank you. Rosie? Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody. Well, like Sue, I'm calling from the UK, and I also wasn't intending to speak at all. I only joined this by accident, Barbara's accident. and I feel very moved by everybody. So I thought I'd just share a brief recollection I have of meeting Jane. This was in India in the 1980s, I think the mid-80s, something like that. And we were both at Lower Mehrabad having our meals there. And one day I found Jane extremely beautiful. She was so elegant and dressed so well, and always hair's always wonderful. And I felt rather gauche, but she always said lovely things. She said lovely things to everybody about how nice you looked and those kind of things. And one day we were having supper in the dining room down at Lower Mehrabad. And I don't remember exactly the start of the conversation, but we may have talked about Christianity. I was brought up in a Christian family and I always loved Christ. And I think I shared that I found it very hard never having met Barbara in the body. So I came to Barbara in 1979 and I've always wished I'd met Barbara. And Jane, I've never forgotten this. Jane reminded me of what Christ said when he was with his disciples, and how Christ said, "Blessed are they who have not seen and yet believe." Blessed are they who have not seen and yet believe. And she said this a couple of times, and she just tried to impress on me that the not seeing Baba was actually a greater gift than having seen him. Somehow she made me believe that, that somehow not having seen Baba, but believing who he is, that he is the Christ, was the greatest gift, the greatest blessing. And somehow it just opened my heart when I remember it. I just opened my heart to Baba, of how blessed we are to have that gift of knowing who he is without having met him in the body, as far as we know. So I've always been grateful for that. She always used to call us all Barbara's darlings. Oh, you're one of Barbara's darlings. And that's so sweet, so loving and sweet and heart-opening. So I just wanted to share that because it just, there was something about the way she kind of made me feel almost like we were at the Last Supper or something. It's like we were there so close with God, really. It was beautiful. Jai Baba, thank you.
Rosie, that was just gorgeous. Thank you. You just brought me right there with you. Darling, Baba's darlings. Yeah. Yeah. When I met her, I always would arrive from Pittsburgh on Saturday morning, would drive overnight so that we'd arrive Saturday morning. So we'd be there for Happy Club. And I did this for years. But when I first met her was the first Happy Club I was there, and it was at the boathouse, and we walked up together from the boathouse up those wonderful little steps and then up to the parking area. And she asked me what I did. And at the time I was taking care of heroin addicts in Pittsburgh. And when I told her that, she just started to cry and she said to me at the time, she said, "Baba said that is the most important work you can do." So I don't know, but that's what she said to me. And I was just so taken that someone could get it, the depth of what I was involved in, and weep, because that's what it was. It was incredible depth. So she immediately saw it right into my heart. Okay, Rosa, Jai Baba, Rosalie. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba. Somehow it's muted my face. Anyway, Jai Baba. So I can't show my little blue bus, which I like to do when we're Zooming. Can you see me at all? No, okay, my camera's not.
Yeah, your camera. There you are.
Yeah,
you look beautiful today. Got your pearls on.
Here we are Zooming. We're all squeezed together, focused on Meher Baba. I met Jane, my first coming to the center in 1971. And I remember being at, we were having a chicken dinner. It was Jane and Elizabeth and myself and my very young roommate, who I thought they invited me because this person was so young and would feel awkward. And it was funny. It was a chicken dinner, and Elizabeth says, "Well, now you can break the wishbone with Lucy." So I did, and I had a wish, and my wish was to know that Baba was the Christ. That was my wish. And we broke it, and I won. And Elizabeth said, Rosalie won. Rosalie knows how to win. And then it was interesting because, you know, Jane was there, and other, I don't remember Jane at that dinner. She was there, but, you know, it was just a chicken dinner. And I was focused on, you know, wanting to know, you know, I brought up very Catholic. Am I on the right track here? And so it was a joyous and great relief. And I wanted to tell about one thing I have to say. The most striking thing for me about Jane was I felt she knew about suffering. She just knew so much about deep, deep suffering. And, you know, sometimes you didn't even have to say things to her. She just had that level of knowing about suffering. And I also think it's interesting because she got the chance to see Baba because I think Zazu Pitts had a flat tire.
No.
And so she took Zazu's place. So she was very fond, of course, of Zazu, and she worked with her too in summer stock. But anyway, so this one visit to the center, I brought her a picture that I got in a magazine of Zazu Pitts. And she was showing this senator. I don't know if he was a federal government or state government, but she was showing him around and he was strutting around like a rooster, so self-absorbed. And she was like charming him beyond belief. Well, when I said, Jane, look, and she totally lost her focus on him. And she went, oh, Zazu. And he kind of bolted like, what happened? And and then she felt awkward, you know, to talk her way out of Zazu Pitts. She didn't. Anyway, it was really interesting to me. And one other thing about, of course, her beauty. She was very beautiful. And when you were showing these pictures, I thought, she's, you know, she has that beauty and she also has the suffering. And I thought of like Greta Garbo, that, you know, it has to be a pained life to be an actress. And it's a weird world. If you get the inside of it, it's quite a challenging world to be in. And she just, I didn't have much contact with her, but we had that link. And another thing that I loved about her, I remember giving her a little holy card of the Epiphany in India, and she had such a deep love of the divine, or, you know, and it was like, I gave her some sacred, you know, it was a sacred thing, you know, but I love that. And I also, I feel that the family has that too, you know, Wendy and Charles, they just have that, you know, and also you know, she shared a birthday or within a day of Mani. They were like sisters. And Mani also had that real bubbly, and then she could go deep in a hair. She could just go so deep. And anyway, happy to share, happy to hear the shares. And it's all Baba. What can we say? It's just all Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Rosalie. As I said, I love your pearls today. Viola, this will be the last share. I think we'll give Charles a break. It's already 1:30. So Viola, you'll be our last.
Jai Baba, Charles and Christopher and everyone there.
Jai Baba, you're not on. We can't see you if you want to be seen.
Not really, but I'll be seen. So I wanted to share because of how deeply touched I was by all the shares and the sense of that freedom of our hearts that Baba has given us, it being in his fold. And I had a moment with Jane that was exquisitely beautiful. I don't know if I was the only one, but there may be several people. It was somewhere near the boathouse, just spontaneous outside. And I was 17. It was my first trip by myself to the center. And your mom, Charles, was sharing something of the beauty of Baba. I don't even know if she's talking directly about Baba, but the whole atmosphere became surcharged with the sense of Baba's presence, more heightened. And I remember it well because I had written it down, and part of being on the center was that I was to be sharing my experience with my teachers. So it was in a journal, and that the teachers read, and this teacher read this and commented on the beauty of, we would say, your mom's connection to Baba and her sharing that connection. And then here all of us sharing from the heart. And I got to see Jane so beautifully through everyone, and so grateful for that. And Charles, it was when the suffering came from the center that I felt so close to you all. And I just want you to know that I so appreciated, Mikhail, your saying that it is true. There's all this taking away that Baba does, and it's heartbreaking, and our hearts get broken open, I think, as you were saying, so that we are with him and not with those things we associate with him. But that's really, besides thanking you all, and particularly Charles and Christopher for sharing so freely. And moms aren't always easy, boy, do I know that. Hard as heck. And anyway, love you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Viola.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Well, why don't we all unmute and just say Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Wait 1 second though, Ruthie.
Okay.
Do you think you could, is that thing
How
from
about-
Khalil Gibran very long?
It's a little bit long, but why don't we all end together so Charles can leave? I think he may need to leave soon.
Okay.
And that'll give him the opportunity. And those that want to stay in here, I'll be happy to read it.
And let me
After that,
just,
would you consider putting the movie of the pictures of her on again? Because
Okay, we'll work.
because a lot of people weren't there at the beginning.
Sure.
so Ruthie, just before I have to jump off, bird, dogs, all kinds of things going on here. But it's been such a wonderful, wonderful time. And I just, so I just want to express gratitude. Thank you, Ruthie, for doing this, putting this all together so beautifully. But also, thank you to everybody who came and was part of this, those who spoke and those who didn't speak. Just being here meant so much to me, just to have you here and bring her mother Jane alive and close on this anniversary day, when I think she would have been 97 if Baba had kept her around. But Baba, as some of you said so beautifully, Baba has kept her around. And today I think I have a deeper appreciation, hearing from so many of you, I have a deeper appreciation of how much he was doing through her that I didn't know, or couldn't fully appreciate, because it's such an individual thing with Baba. But how he worked through her, how he gave his love through her. So it's been deeply, deeply moving to hear that, and so touching. How Mother would have loved to know that in spite of all the things that she felt were her limitations and her unworthiness and her challenges and her struggles, that Baba worked through her, his love, his grace. And it only goes to show how great he is. As Francis would say, what a mighty beloved is our beloved, that he uses us to awaken hearts, to touch others. He uses whatever it is we have. And, whether it's Mother's, how she looked, how she talked, how she suffered. I mean, especially how she suffered, as Rosalie was talking about. I mean, she knew suffering from that early part of her life, and Baba used that to help people in their suffering, because only someone who's suffered in that way can Baba help reach out to people who are suffering. It's that empathy that comes only through suffering. And so that just came home to me so strongly today, how Baba used everything about Mother, everything, to accomplish his work in everyone. And what a great tribute to Baba to hear from all of you, and to be with all, I mean, what a great tribute to Baba. The love that you have for him, the life you've given to him. I don't know, this has been such a gift, such a gift. So thank you all for being here, sharing silently and out loud his love. Thank you so much. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai
Charles,
Baba.
thank you. I'm sure everybody. say
Hey,
thank you.
Baba. Thank you, Charles.
Baba.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank
You
you.
and Christopher.
Precious, thank you very much, Jai Baba.
Yeah, Baba.
So beautiful.
Jai Baba, thank you.
Well, there's 54 of us. Yeah.
Thanks, Baba.
Jai Baba.
All right. How about Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai?
Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar.
Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar
Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
That is Jamie. Whoa.
Thank you, Charles.
Jai
Jai Baba.
Baba.
You set the tone, Charles.